AS hidden camera exposed the one person who truly loved his son. The Kessler mansion stood like a monument, grand, cold, and eerily quiet. Everything gleamed: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless art. But none of it felt alive. Not since Jonathan Kessler, the billionaire with a schedule sharper than his jawline, had lost his wife 2 years ago. Since then, Jonathan had buried himself in work, building companies, growing his empire, chasing perfection. Emotions had no place in his world, not even at home. His 7-year-old son, Oliver, was the only remnant of warmth. A pale, fragile boy confined to a hospital bed in his room due to a rare neurological disorder. He couldn't walk, barely spoke, and often stared out the window, expressionless. Jonathan, too busy for bedtime stories or soft lullabies, thought love meant hiring the best doctors, therapists, and nurses. That should have been enough. And then there was Grace, the maid. Quiet, composed, mid-30s. A black woman in a modest gray and white uniform who moved through the halls like she didn't belong. She was hired to clean, nothing more. But then Jonathan noticed something strange. Oliver, once withdrawn, had started smiling, eating more, humming under his breath. Jonathan dismissed it at first, but something gnawed at him. One evening, on impulse, he reviewed security camera footage from the hallway. What he saw made his breath hitch. There was Grace sitting by Oliver's bedside, brushing his hair gently, holding his hand, telling him stories, even laughing with him. She brought him a small stuffed bear, definitely not from the house. Footage showed her feeding him when he refused food, soothing him during fevers, and even sleeping in the chair by his bed on nights when his condition worsened. And no one told her to do any of it. Jonathan watched the screen long after the footage ended. A flicker of doubt burned inside him. Was this real? Or was she manipulating them? He needed the truth. The next morning, he ordered a hidden camera be installed in Oliver's hospital room, discreetly tucked above a light fixture. He told himself it was for safety, but deep down it was suspicion. That night, he locked himself in his study and opened the live feed. Grace walked into the room. Oliver lay still, a small figure under soft blankets. Grace knelt beside him. "I brought your favorite," she whispered, holding out a folded napkin. "2 butter cookies. Don't tell the nurse." Oliver smiled. Faint, but real. "Thank you. You're so strong," she told him. "Stronger than all the superheroes you watch." His voice cracked. "I miss Mommy." Grace's eyes softened. "I miss mine too, baby." Then she leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "I'll never let anything happen to you, even if your daddy never shows up again." Jonathan's heart twisted. He couldn't stop watching. Every night after that, he watched the recordings. Grace reading bedtime stories, singing lullabies, standing up to rude nurses, arguing with doctors to make sure Oliver got what he needed. She wasn't a maid anymore. She was his son's protector, and Jonathan had been blind to it. But the moment that shattered him happened on a rainy Tuesday. Oliver had a seizure. Medical staff were slow to respond, but Grace wasn't. She rushed in, cradled his head, whispering, "Stay with me, baby. I've got you. I've got you." When the seizure subsided, she collapsed beside him in tears, clinging to his tiny hand like her life depended on it. That night, Jonathan stood silently at the door of the hospital room, rain dripping from his suit, his presence unnoticed. Inside, Grace sat beside Oliver, humming a lullaby. eyes closed in quiet prayer. Her hands gently wrapped around Oliver's. Jonathan's fists clenched. He'd built empires, conquered industries, won awards. But here, in this room, he felt like the poorest man in the world. He stepped forward. Grace looked up, startled, quickly rising. Sir, I didn't know. I saw. He interrupted quietly. She froze. I installed a camera, he confessed. I thought someone might be manipulating him, or me. But now he hesitated. Now I'm ashamed I ever doubted you. Grace's voice was calm, but her eyes shimmered. I didn't do it for you. I know. Jonathan said softly to a long silence. My son, she finally said. He was 6, had leukemia. I worked 2 jobs, tried everything, but we couldn't afford the treatment. I held his hand until it went cold. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. When I saw Oliver, I saw the same sadness. I couldn't save mine, Mr. Kessler, but I promised God, if I ever got a second chance, I'd give everything to save someone else's child. Jonathan looked at his sleeping son. His hand trembled as he reached out and took Oliver's hand for the first time in months. I didn't know, he whispered. You weren't supposed to, she replied. It was between me and him. Jonathan sat down beside her. I thought money was enough. Private doctors, nurses. I thought that made me a good father. Grace looked at him, her voice steady. Money helps them survive. Love is what makes them want to. Those words stayed with him. Hours passed. The rain softened. Machines hummed in rhythm. A.S. Grace stood to leave the room. Jonathan rose too. I want to ask you something, he said. Her body tensed. If I've overstepped, no, he interrupted. Listen, he took a breath. You're not just our maid. Not to me. Not to Oliver. I want you to stay. As family. She stared, stunned. Not out of pity, he added. Because I need you. And because Oliver loves you. I know it. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he whispered. She nodded, voice cracking. Yes. Months later, the Kessler mansion didn't change in design, but it felt warmer. There were still chandeliers and marble floors. But now, there was laughter. Grace no longer wore a uniform. She was just Grace. Family. She, Jonathan, and Oliver often sat on the porch together, watching sunsets, reading stories, sharing silence that didn't feel empty anymore. And Oliver smiled more, laughed louder, lived brighter. Jonathan, once a machine in a suit, became something else than a father. Not because of wealth, but because one quiet woman showed him what love actually looked like. And whenever someone asks Jonathan Kessler what changed his life, he never says a fortune. He just smiles, looks at Grace, and says, a hidden camera.